power failure. But it's actually still there, eh? So I could text him. Okay. Good morning, and once again welcome to our media briefing. The main purpose of today, as Janine outlined, is really to update the public through you, very key stakeholders on the 2019-2020 tax filing season. Please be patient with me because I would like to amplify a few points of principle that would be helpful for you to understand, and we are relying on you to report some of the information as part of our campaign to engage with our taxpayers. And so the pen is mightier than the sword, so we would like you to use your pen to help us. Tax filing season, what is it? It's when SARS creates the opportunity for taxpayers, individuals and business, to finalize their tax obligations of the previous year. For many taxpayers who earn below 500,000 though, this year we have raised the threshold, and if you earn in that area and have a simple declaration, there is no need to file a return, since SARS will use the information we already have received through third-party data source providers to finalize your assessment. Taxpayers also are required to who are required to file are expected to make a final declaration of their income, and this is a legal declaration which SARS evaluates using the information we already have, plus any additional information a taxpayer is required by law to disclose, and that is then the basis of a final assessment that is made by SARS. The outcome may obviously be a result in a refund if you are not selected for an audit, or an amount that you owe to top up your outstanding obligation. And then, of course, if SARS detects any discrepancy in your disclosure, you may be selected through our sophisticated risk-based methodology for an audit. So you know if you're okay if you e-file, press submit, and within a second get an answer from us. So in sharing our plans for the upcoming tax filing season, we'd like to firstly restate our commitment to building confidence between the South African public and the South African Revenue Service. This is very important for us, building confidence and working hard to earn the trust of the South African public. Secondly, to continue the work, the important work that ensures that a high level of tax morality and a culture of voluntary compliance is restored to the extent where it might have been declined and improved over time, because voluntary compliance is the highest leverage to reduce the tax burden on all of us and to ensure that the tax that is due is in fact collected when it is due. And then thirdly, an important part of what we want to achieve is that the taxpayer should be empowered with the important information, and this is to ensure that every taxpayer understands their obligation. Secondly, to make it easy to comply. And thirdly, when required, to allow SARS to act decisively to enforce compliance. Because we still have here and there to filing via our branches. And then an interesting data point is that 1.5 million taxpayers who were not actually required to file because of our threshold came and submitted a return. And of them, about 1 million, 64% of them, actually came into our branches. Now, whilst we love people to visit us, SARS is not a place you visit because you have nothing to do. And secondly, when public unnecessarily visit our branches, it inadvertently creates a service impact for those who need to be there. And so having a quick evaluation of what we achieved last year, we then realized that we have to work harder to achieve the outcomes, and we did that this year by enhancing our service features to encourage more taxpayers to use the convenience of online filing and to build public confidence and trust. So allow me now to turn, therefore, to the upcoming tax filing season. In planning for the tax season, it is important that we bear in mind that we want to lower the cost of compliance to taxpayers as well as for SARS, and that the evolving nature of the environment that we operate in allows us to be far more connected to all economic activities. Technology is just so powerful today, it allows us to look into every nook and cranny and to be connected to every economic activity. And tax is simply an overlay of economic activity. And so the better we are connected to the economy, the better we are able to serve, but also to detect areas of non-compliance. So against this background, I would like to address each of these pillars. The first is education. So this year, we will work even harder, but we are pleased to say that in partnering with government and large entities, we've seen significant support. So I can share with you, for example, that government and large state-owned enterprises have significantly, we work with them to increase the e-filing uptake, and we work with them to make their internet and websites available to allow government employees to file from their workplaces, not take off work, but to make it easy. And this year again, we will be using many of our officials in these departments to help government employees transition to e-filing or the Mobi app. Secondly, we will also be providing additional training at our branches so that when taxpayers do come to our branches, we can empower them to convert them to online filing using one of the two applications that I mentioned, and then to have a hassle-free submission of their return. Thirdly, an easy-to-follow link on social media, which we will launch shortly, such as Twitter and Facebook, as well as on our website, that will provide step-by-step guidance for taxpayers on how to register, how to complete their tax returns, and then how to file it online. Because that's really a big, important shift for us, as I mentioned before. To reach out to many of our communities where there may not be an office close by, we have 23 mobile tax units deployed that will assist taxpayers in remote areas and also assist them to convert them to e-filing and to the Mobi app. And this year, we have decided to provide free Wi-Fi at these mobile tax units, and also within our branches, by the way, so that taxpayers who may not have connection to Wi-Fi are able to come to our branches, and in a facilitated way, we can convert them to become online filers. That's the first one in terms of education and outreach. The second point, which is service, I think what's important here is I first address those taxpayers who are required or who choose to submit a return. In the age where we are, the so-called digital or technology-driven age, we continue to encourage and support taxpayers to convert to online filing through our e-filing service, and this makes the submission of the return simpler and more convenient, but as I said, also facilitates the overall objective that we have to improve voluntary compliance and to easier detect where we need to serve, where we need to give additional outreach, and also how do we overall manage our compliance outcomes. So this year we have significantly improved our SARS Mobi app. which can be downloaded from the Apple or the Android stores. We also this year have added some additional convenience features on the platform that will significantly enhance the application with intuitive features as you would normally when you use mobile apps. These are normally intuitive. So for example, easier navigation. Secondly, biometric authentication. You would expect that SARS, who prides itself in its modernization journey, would also step up and allow biometric authentication. And it's especially valuable for people like me who often forget my username and my password. Now I can just use my thumb and make sure I don't lose my thumb along the way. And then, of course, we're going to make use of one-time PINs to provide additional security to taxpayers where they may have concerns. And then an easier way to reset your username and password. We will make use, as the convention is, of security questions. And then I think an important additional facility would be the ability of Mobi app to scan and upload your supporting documents, and this then allows you to do an entire submission of your return, including any supporting documents that you may have. So should you wish to convert to online filing and you require help, we also invite taxpayers to come to our branches where we will assist you to register and submit your return electronically. This is actually a mutual benefit. As I said, it improves service to taxpayers and it helps us manage our capacity more effectively. Those taxpayers, like they always will be, who insist for any reason to still be assisted to file at a branch, this is what you can expect. Firstly, on your arrival, don't be surprised that we will try and encourage you to convert you to an e-filer. And to enable that, we will have some of our staff on hand who will help you to convert. We would ask taxpayers to bring their supporting documents so that it can be a one-stop service. And then also not to wait for the deadline, because then you do manage or run into the inevitable queues. And as I said earlier, we will also provide Wi-Fi in our branches so that taxpayers who have data challenges can come and use our Wi-Fi to register and submit their returns. Our call centers, which is an important service channel for us. This is important so that taxpayers who have any queries or questions may call in and expect to be professionally responded to by well-trained staff. And then, of course, should taxpayers require assistance, we have also an additional facility which is Help You e-file that will enable and facilitate a conversation to also empower our own service agents to respond appropriately and to assist you even remotely. Whilst every effort is made, obviously, to answer calls quickly, sometimes we do experience high calls, and therefore we ask taxpayers to select a callback function which will allow us to call you back and again make it seamless for you. The next is an important aspect because we're really trying to manage the response from taxpayers. So please help us in communicating this. The following taxpayers are not required to submit a return. We've decided to increase the threshold from 350,000 Rand to an annual earnings of 500,000 Rand. And this means you are not required to submit a return if the following is true. 1, your total income for the year is not more than 500,000. 2, you only receive income from a single employer. I don't know why anyone wants to have more than one boss. 3, you have no other form of income, such as a car allowance, business income, taxable interest, rental income, or income from another job. 4thly, you have no additional deductible allowances such as medical expenses, travel expenses, or retirement annuities. So when you have a simple return below 500,000 with no additional complexities, you will not be required to file. and we will send an SMS to this group of taxpayers who are not required to file. And we encourage taxpayers to heed this call, as it is intended to really simplify matters for you. Imagine not having to file a return and to be allowed to do so lawfully. It's the best offer since sliced bread, I think. Unless, of course, you fall within this category and you do have additional information that you want to declare, whether that is income information or expense information, then you clearly will submit a return. And you will find more information about this on our website, www.sars.gov.za, under do you need to submit a return. The third pillar is enforcement, and let me address that for a few moments. We have a compliance model that says, firstly, we will reach out to provide education, to make you aware, and to provide certainty of your obligation. That's our first important engagement with taxpayers. Secondly, we will, as I've shared with you now, make it easy for you to fulfill that obligation through the service offerings and the features that we use. And thirdly, if after we have had that friendly engagement, taxpayers still are either negligent or fraudulent in their response, then your behavior and relationship with us is calibrated by your behavior with us. So if you present a high risk to SARS, we will treat you very differently to taxpayers who present a low risk. And we are very clear about this. So deadlines matter. If you consistently miss deadlines, it will be enforced strictly. We encourage taxpayers to submit their returns early. Late submissions carry penalties, and we remind you that it is a criminal offense if you do not submit your tax return at all. Voluntary compliance matter. To encourage voluntary compliance, we go out of our way to assist taxpayers, the honest ones, to make it easier for them, but dishonest taxpayers who are detected for an audit or criminal investigation will experience the consequence of their action. Paying outstanding taxes matter. Making payments when it is due is important, as late penalties will incur penalties and interest, and SARS will enforce those provisions. Honest declarations matter. We are doing a lot more to obtain third-party information from various providers, which allow us to match the information taxpayers disclose with the information that we have on file, and clearly where there is a mismatch, then one of the two is wrong, and unless taxpayers present us with additional information, we will assume that our information is correct and act on that. And so I think that is important. Taxpayers obviously will always have the opportunity to update information where they think it is required. But under-declaration and over-deduction of expenses is an area where significant abuse is still often detected. Then detecting corruption matters. We remind you that monies received from bribes or from criminal activities will not only land you in trouble with the law, but it is taxable. The bad news is that those who pay bribes may not use those bribes payment as tax deductible as a deduction in the production of income. But they do qualify for criminal conviction. I'd like to make an appeal to a few stakeholders. Firstly, to employers. Employers and providers of third-party information such as banks, insurance companies, medical administrators form an important interdependency with SARS. The early submission of interest statements by banks, retirement annuity certificates, and other relevant statements from insurance companies and pension fund administrators, and medical certificates are all information which we get, and that then goes into the information we use to pre-populate your returns to make it easier for you, and we present you with a return that has this information already in it. And so, as I said, that not only allows us to serve you better, but it also helps us to manage compliance Many taxpayers experience long delays. This is just an anecdote. Long delays for the returns, and it is often not because of SARS, but because their employer have not fulfilled their obligation to submit their pay-as-you-earn returns as required in law. And then, sadly, taxpayers wait for the outcome, and very often it is in expectation of a refund. And we must say that for many people, this refund is the difference between another meal or not. So it's not an insignificant expectation of taxpayers. In this regard, I would like to express my appreciation to our government departments, who as an employer have achieved 99% compliance in the past year, and private sector lags this with a compliance level of 90%. We appeal to all employers to urgently submit outstanding information before filing season commences, as this may compromise your employees from fulfilling their legal obligation. We also would like to single out the financial and medical sectors today for collaborating with us in the supply of third-party taxpayer information. In the future, we will place a much higher focus on pay-as-you-earn compliance by employers, since this is a critical upstream activity that creates significant downstream service benefits and compliance benefits for individual taxpayers and for SARS. And so pay-as-you-earn, we are signposting as a significant focus area in the coming years. I would also like to make an appeal to tax practitioners and tax preparers. We value the service of those who provide advice and assist taxpayers to file. But we make a firm appeal that you diligently ensure the correctness and the completeness of the returns to expedite the assessment of your clients, those on whose behalf you act. We also would like to warn taxpayers and tax preparers that making false declarations is fraud and have serious consequences. And now I would like to focus on the tax filing dates, and important that we communicate this with clarity. So the start dates. Tax filing season this year starts on the 1st of August 2019 for all taxpayers who file their returns in our branches. Taxpayers are encouraged to use one of our online channels. Let me repeat that. Tax filing season this year starts on the 1st of August 2019 for all taxpayers who file their tax returns, not those who are not required to return. Taxpayers are encouraged to use one of our online channels, either e-filing or Mobi app, to file electronically from the 1st of July. And taxpayers may make use of the Wi-Fi offering at our branches if they want to come in to download the apps, to register for e-filing, and also with assistance from our staff to complete their submission while they are there. Closing dates. Taxpayers who file at our branches, closing date for them is the 31st of October 2019. Taxpayers who use online e-filing, i.e. the e-filing or the Mobi app, closing date for them is the 4th of December 2019. And for provisional taxpayers who file online, the closing date is the 31st of January 2020. I feel I need to clarify the earlier point. So let me say that again in terms of start dates. Tax filing this year starts on the 1st of August 2019 for all taxpayers. We have, however, to encourage taxpayers to make the switch, we will start opening e-filing for taxpayers on the 1st of July. And for those taxpayers who want to be helped or who on their own merit would like to convert to e-filing or to Mobi app from the 1st of July. Let me conclude. I think it's important that we remind ourselves that when each of us as individuals or businesses fulfill our tax obligation, we contribute towards the building of a capable state and the provision of essential public goods and services. It is often the most vulnerable in society, the poor, the unemployed, who benefit. We know that without the social wage, many of our fellow citizens would be in dire stress if it wasn't for the social wage. Those of us who are privileged to have employment have the legal and moral obligation to contribute our taxes and through that contribute towards their well-being. In addressing compliance, tax morality and trade facilitation, Taxpayers in conjunction with SARS serves this higher purpose of enabling the building of a capable democratic state that fosters sustainable economic growth and social development in the interest of and in the well-being of all South Africans. Thank you for joining us, and we now will share with you just a flavor of what else is available before we move on to question and answers. Thank you. This is the new Mobi app. Of course, the multiple choice question for you is, do you file A, coming to our branches, B, electronic e-filing, or C, Mobi app? So, and the winner is, of course, Mobi app, isn't it? Because literally, this does it for you, and if you agree with it, you simply accept it and your return or your legal assessment liability is fulfilled. And literally, if you have no complications, this should take you, including downloading the app, 4 minutes. So hopefully we'll convert many more. There's another clip, the radio clip. Okay, whilst they're looking for that, we're going into our question and answer session, and I hand over to Shlengani Matebula.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Shlengani Matebula, and it's nice to see you, a lot of you colleagues I haven't seen in a long time. So we'll do 2 rounds of questions, and then we'll have the answers. Let me first just clarify that there may be those who have an expectation that we'll do radio or TV interviews in the evening and tomorrow. We are unfortunately not going to do that this time around, but we will give you ample opportunity to do one-on-ones after this. So please, those who syndicate to your sister radio stations and other stable newspapers that you work with, please do utilize the time that will afford you on the one-on-one to exhaustively ask your questions to the Commissioner, and you will be entertained to the fullest. And we won't be making anybody available for late interviews in the evening or in the morning tomorrow. Suffice to say that on the 1st of July we will have an opportunity when we formally launch the tax season. This is to launch to you, but we'll have another opportunity to be able to entertain more questions. So please do identify yourself, in respect of which Karen, newsroom, right? I mustn't make a mistake. So Karen, you will be the first one. There's a mic.
Thank you. Commissioner, you mentioned in your address this issue of corruption. Now, I know that SARS is precluded from identifying targets of investigation, but we know, for instance, the National Prosecuting Authority has people at the state capture inquiry. But you've mentioned that, you know, corruption carries certain tax implications. Can you give us any kind of idea of whether SARS is putting the kind of same concerted as efforts as the NPA is in terms of investigating the individuals identified as possibly receiving bribes in the state capture inquiry? And then the second question is, during the Nugent Commission, there were findings with regards to potentially refunds being withheld from people and certain individuals getting refunds as a part of a kind of political project within SARS, and also a kind of obfuscation of what SARS's true revenue figures were. What kind of guarantees can you give the South African public that that issue of refunds, which was so thorny, which I think has caused a lot of issues with compliance, has actually been resolved, and that all people are now going to be treated fairly? Thank you.
That will be the first question from Karen. Barry?
Good morning, Barry Bateman, Eyewitness News. I refer also to the Nugent Commission of Inquiry and the findings made about the systemic issues within the organization, the forcing out of people, almost essentially a brain drain because they did not toe the line. And of course, the degradation of the morale in the organization. You arrived a month ago. Give us insight into what you found Was it what you had expected having read the Nugent Commission of Inquiry? Was it worse than expected? What have you done to turn that around, to reinvigorate the staff and to perhaps get back some of those skills that might have been lost? And how long do you anticipate turning this organization around? Thank you.
Another hand, just next to Barry. Ma'am, just introduce yourself.
I'm Sibongile from PIN 24. I just want to find out what motivated the increase of the threshold from 350 per annum to 500,000.
Yes, sir. I'm seeing you for the first time, so
Sure.
forgive me if I don't know your name.
No problem. It's Ray Mahlaka from Daily Maverick. My first question was also about walking into SARS a month in. How have you found staff morale to be at SARS?
So you said, Ray,
Ray Mahlaka from Daily Maverick. Hi. And the second question is about the reinstatement.
sorry, if you could just repeat your question, please.
Okay, so you're a month in now. Just how have you found staff morale within SARS since you've started?
Okay.
And the second question was, I'm not sure if you can talk about this, but the update on the reinstatement of the illegal cigarette unit within SARS. Is there perhaps an update there? How far are you with that endeavor? Thank you.
One last
Fine.
question for this round. Okay, that will be the last then. Commissioner, you could answer.
Sure. So thank you. And some of the responses may overlap. If you feel insufficiently responded to, then please have another go. But Karen, the Zondo Commission and the Nugent Report and any other commission that is focused on the state capture project, we have created a separate capacity under Marking On with dedicated resources to ensure, one, that we are responsive to what's happening there. Some of it obviously ends up in the public domain. We still have to ascertain and verify whether there are factual bases for it, but just that we have a focused response to that and to manage it very tightly, we have created this dedicated capacity. The second thing we are doing is working very closely with organs like the SIU and the National Prosecuting Authority to ensure that we collaborate and maximize the return on our effort to ensure that those who have been involved in any corrupt activity, that they face the consequence of their action, and we will do so without fear or favor. And that, you can imagine, is an ever-evolving and continuing process, and we are right in the slipstream of that as it happens. On the refunds, specific to your question, there's a number of things we are reviewing, and refunds is one of those things that we are reviewing. First of all, we have set right the current practice. And it must be clear to anyone within SARS that the willful manipulation of refunds for any intent is unlawful and will be dealt with. So we are very clear where we stand on that. We cannot become complicit in aiding or abetting any corrupt intent by a taxpayer or groups of taxpayers, and SARS staff are required to act professionally and even-handedly in the administration of refunds. And to the refunds that you allude to make sure that that is appropriately reviewed and looked into for us to have clarity around what was its intent, what was its impact, and how do we deal with that. Barry, to your question of systemic issues, so yes, I have been here a month. It feels like 10 years already. So what have I done? I've spent quite a lot of my time going through our offices. I've already met 60% of our staff, and I've gone alone. I've not taken the executives with me to allow staff to talk freely and openly with me. By Monday, I will have seen 80% of our staff, and then it becomes more difficult because of the outlying officers. But the intention is to meet with our staff for a number of reasons. Firstly, to reconnect with them visibly, tangibly, meaningfully, but also positively. On the first day of May, when I started, whilst many of you were on holiday, I wrote a letter to each of our staff members, personally addressed to them, wherein I make a few things clear, because I believe leaders should be clear where they stand on matters of substance, and they should communicate that clarity so that those who are engaged in the leadership endeavor don't have to second guess where I stand on matters. So my letter, after welcoming myself and saying I'm happy to be here, I am clear where I stand on the Nugent Commission and the State Capture Project, and I'm clear that to the extent that there are recommendations coming out of these, that I take them seriously and I will address all of them. Secondly, I said to staff very clearly, this is what you can expect of me and hold me accountable for, and in turn this is what I expect of you and what I will hold you accountable for, so that we have a psychological contract that's clear, nothing vague about it. And then I say collectively, if we do this, the outcome will be a restored public confidence, we will restore public trust, but also work towards voluntary compliance and achieving the objectives within our mandate of collecting the revenue that's due when it's due, of improving the compliance culture overall, and to facilitate trade, and then also to make sure that we return to be an employer of choice, an employer where our employees can be proud to say, I work for SARS, and not worry or hide or be ashamed of it. And so that's all hard work, and my letter begins to kick off a dialogue with staff, and the letter, if any of you are interested in the letter, you're welcome to have the letter. It's not a trade secret. And then also to just also provide a listening opportunity for staff to tell me their concerns. So let me frankly tell you that when an IT system breaks, it is easy to fix it. Okay? When a policy is wrong, it's easy to fix it. When some hardware needs to be repaired, you can easily fix it. What's hardest to fix is the spirits of people. And sadly, I have found that many of our staff have lost trust in the leadership. Many of them have a broken spirit. We have unfortunately created a culture of fear and intimidation, and racial tension is sadly high in the organization. And so the first step to changing something is to not be in denial about it and to speak about it openly. And so that's what we've done. And that's what we need to address. And we are committed to addressing that. And people will hold us accountable for that, as they should. In terms of, Barry, specifically you asked about the disciplinary cases. We are reviewing all disciplinary cases from 2014 to present, and where we believe that these cases were created or manufactured to support the corrupt intent, we obviously have to address that. And where there has been a skills flight, or also people who have just been marginalized within the organization, so there are still, they come to work but they're not at work because they're not given meaningful work. We are addressing all of that. The Nugent report calls it supernumeraries, and we are addressing that. And where we believe that certain skills have left that would be useful on a case-by-case basis, we will consider that. Sibongile, to your question, why 500,000? There's a dual purpose to the introduction of a threshold. On the one hand, we have to consider, in the case of a taxpayer who has a simple affair, we have enough information and we have a sophisticated risk engine that models and detects any discrepancies in the information we have. And if we are comfortable that we have sufficient information that's correct and available, and we are comfortable that it presents no risk to the fiscus or risk to compliance, we are happy to say, I don't know if you remember in the old days we had sight, right? And below sight was a final deduction. You didn't have to do an assessment or return. This is a kind of advanced version of sight, because in the case of sight we didn't do any risk modeling to detect any non-compliance. So this is a lot more sophisticated than that, and we are comfortable that by moving the threshold from 350 to 500, we increase the universe of taxpayers for whom, on the one hand, we make it simple, whilst on the other hand, we feel comfortable we can manage the risk of non-compliance. Ray, I think the morale question I have answered. I must tell you a joke that a certain CEO told me when his organization had low morale that the beating will continue until the morale improves. That's not how you improve morale. In terms of the illegal unit, nothing will be resurrected. I don't have those powers to resurrect anything. So what we have commissioned is, let me just step back and share with you, there is a phenomena called the illicit economy, a place where people willfully, fraudulently, and with criminal intent try to manipulate value chains and then fraudulently or fail to disclose the actual value of the business in order to mask the tax effect. That phenomena is undisputable. It's there. We cannot ignore it. So we've commissioned a piece of strategic work internally that says, let's go and reassess that phenomena, quantify it, so that we understand it better. Secondly, let's understand how, in terms of our mandate, we can respond to the phenomena. And our mandate may provide certain tools and instruments for us, but it may also limit us in certain sense. And to the extent that we may not be able to deal with the phenomena comprehensively, we will work with the investigative units like the SIU and with the prosecuting authorities to ensure that we have a whole of government approach to deal with the phenomena. When we have decided what our response ought to be, we will then create the capacity to deal with it, and then the organizational arrangement. And that may give birth to what you call a unit. But it will not be resurrecting anything that existed. It will be from first principles, applying our mind and coming up with an appropriate response and an appropriate organizational arrangement that will deal with this. Thankfully, we have some people in our organization who have those skills, and so we have immediately said the work, in the absence of a new organizational arrangement capacity, the work can already commence. We don't have to wait for, and so there are people right now who are dealing within our broader enforcement capability, are dealing with the phenomena as it manifests. And you know, we have been public about the illicit tobacco industry. We are maybe not have been as public about the fuel industry, but let me say openly, those so that those who are involved may be forewarned. There's a significant amount of abuse that is taking place in the fuel industry as well. And then there are other areas that operate in the so-called illicit economy. I hope that addresses the questions you ask. Yes, of course.
So it's not a dedicated unit for... so it's not a unit, but it's a work stream per se that is dedicated to all levels of illicit trade. And
no, so let me be clear.
Yeah.
We will establish a dedicated capacity. Okay? But that is a strategic piece of work that will take another month or two. But in the meantime, we have deployed people who have the requisite skills to do the work that is required. So don't get hung up about a unit. The work is important, okay? And you can leave here with the assurance that we are doing that work as we speak.
Okay. So let's go to second round.
Genevieve Quinzel from the Business Day. It's actually just a follow-up on that question about the unit, because the Finance Minister had announced the budget that there was an illicit economy unit. So just to clarify, you're saying that unit hasn't actually been set up yet because you're looking at the dynamics of it, what you can do, what you can't do, but there are people looking into the illicit economy?
So I think we get hung up about a unit, okay? And let me also be clear, there is some public narratives about units that I don't want to reinforce, right? And so I'm saying is, let's focus on the work that must be done, and let's deploy requisite skills and capacity to do that work. In parallel with that, let's go back to first principles and establish what is the most appropriate way we can respond to it. How do we complete the upskilling, reskilling, retooling and repurposing of that work, and then come to a organizational arrangement which almost certainly will be the creation of a dedicated capacity, which we will name. We'll have a christening ceremony to name it appropriately. We haven't thought of a name yet.
Sorry, can I just add to that? Then can we maybe have a bit of an update? I know also at that time of the budget, there were raids in terms of the tobacco industry and that. Have there been some successes in terms of the illicit economy? What have you guys found? I know you can't give us exact detail of taxpayer information, but maybe a bit of an update on what's been happening in terms of those issues.
We are very, very active in the illicit economy. And yes, we have identified fraudulent behavior related to specific industries and specific taxpayers, and we are enforcing. There was recently in the media the announcement of a specific stream of work that we have initiated before I started, and that is to deal with the tobacco industry specifically, the so-called tracking and tracing of the entire value chain. I have asked just for the opportunity for me to apply my mind to what is the best response also. And so you would have picked up in the media that whilst initially we had a due date for the submission of tenders of the 20th of June, we have said we are going to come back with a revised date so that we have the opportunity to just make sure that our response is appropriate. Not only appropriate, but also has integrity. Yeah. Okay? From the business case conceptualization through to the procurement, through to the organizational arrangement we put in place. We cannot afford to have responses to legitimate challenges that we face as SARS that is questionable in the public domain. And therefore I will slow it down and I will apply my mind with the help that I have from the team that work with me to make sure that we are absolutely above reproach, unscrutable, and can give the public the confidence that the work we have done is a necessary piece of work. It's not a figment of our imagination. It's a piece of work that is soundly grounded in a business case. And secondly, that our response is appropriate in terms of who we work with, what skills and capacity we need, and how we organize ourselves internally to give effect to it.
Okay. Is there any follow-up? No, go ahead.
This is not a follow-up, but a separate question. Hilary Jaffe, freelancing for Business Times. Commissioner, we are 2 months into the new fiscal year. I know it is early, but are you seeing any trends in terms of revenue? And I ask it especially after the very enormous shortfall we had in the previous fiscal year. Does it look any better at this early stage of the new one? And related to that, you've been set a target in the budget of, I think, to grow revenue by 10.5%, even a little bit more than that, which is actually pretty ambitious after last year's underperformance. With economists now downgrading growth and today's GDP figures likely to look pretty bad, how confident are you that you can meet this target?
Let me answer it by potentially teaching you to suck eggs. Okay. So we don't create the economy. Again, we are not that powerful. The way that the revenue target is set takes into account at least three things. Firstly, it takes into account the macroeconomic conditions that facilitate, drive, and create growth. And that comes with all its efficiencies and its inefficiencies, and GDP, as we know, is a very poor proxy for the actual growth. But notwithstanding, that's one lens through which we look when we collaborate with National Treasury and they finally set us the revenue target. The second lens is additional tax proposals, and when that is modeled, it's modeled because there is behind that the intent to shape taxpayer behavior as well as use tax revenue to help shape that behavior in the right way. And so that creates an additional opportunity. And the more recent one is the carbon tax initiative. So that's the second lens through which we create revenue. The third, and for us the most important revenue, is our compliance activities. And very often it's not the economy, but the quality of our compliance response that helps us to achieve the target. So my confidence, Hilary, is not in the economy. I accept it is what it is. It's not in thinking up new proposals. It is what it is, and therefore 100% of our effort at the moment is to ensure that we understand the risks that should direct our work, and that we direct our work appropriately to give us the best possible chance to collect the revenue that is due. I can tell you now that the internal message is 1.422 is the target. We will not intellectualize it. We will strive to achieve it.
Okay, any further questions? Colleagues, in the absence of any further questions, we will then break from here to allow for the one-on-ones. As I said, please be exhaustive because after those one-on-ones, we are not going to be entertaining questions further. Maybe another time, but not today and not tomorrow, due to availability of the Commissioner's time.
I've got to collect the revenue. I can't sit here and sit on TV, Hilary.
So the media team so Sandile, Janine, and others will give you your spacing to be able to have those conversations with the Commissioner. And I think we will have arranged a specific room in which you can have the interviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you.